I want to bring today's episode to the podcast talking about how to move to a holistic lifestyle. And this is when you're on the fertility journey, you may have already, dipped your toes into some of these things. We're talking sound baths. We're talking essential oils, homesteading. How can you do that in an urban setting? What can you start with? And really finding things that just, give you joy. And I really enjoyed this conversation, so I'm excited for you to listen to it. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. Hey, guess what? Blue Blocks is having their end of year financial sale. You can save 20% off on orders up to $159 US, 25% off on orders over $160 US, and 30% off on orders over $315 US. Definitely check out their awesome selection of blue and green light blocking glasses for day use and for evening use as well. Hey there. Thanks so much for listening to the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast. And I've got a favor to ask you. If you are enjoying learning about the functional approach to fertility, consider going to iTunes and rating and reviewing the podcast. This is how it helps the show reach more people that are struggling with infertility, knowing that there's another approach that really can get to the bottom of why it's not working in the first place. So all you need to do is, if you're on the app or the desktop, just go in and consider leaving a 5-star rating and leave a review. And there is step-by-step instructions in the show notes showing you exactly how to do that. So if you can just take a few minutes, just take the few minutes right now. You can pause this recording, come back, leave the review. It would really mean the world to me and help others that are on the fertility journey as well. Take care. I didn't need to go to donor eggs. Obviously, I don't regret it. I have beautiful children. I could have done things differently, restored. I was still cycling back in my 20s. I could have looked at my health, the environmental toxins, the stress I was under.
Many women are being told their eggs are too old. That's often merely an assumption that's not based on actual evidence. The reason being that there is no direct test of egg quality. You can't test egg quality.
It's the man who's got a food sensitivity or he has a zinc deficiency.
Like, there can be a root cause to these symptoms that are, quote unquote, period problems, that the doctor will pass you a pill without any question of why.
And some part of you knows that if you can reframe your journey from not want to struggle, or if it is struggle, learn how to embrace the struggle. Learn how to embrace it.
Most conditions in the child occur during the 9 months of development. It's the genetic switches are turned on or turned off, and they're pre-programmed. So you are in such a powerful, amazing position to do amazing things for your kids.
Why is IVF the first step? Because we believe it should be the last step. Welcome to Get Pregnant Naturally, where functional medicine and natural fertility solutions will help you get pregnant and have your baby. Hey there, I'm Sarah Clark, founder of FabFertile and your host. I believe the functional approach is the first step for anyone struggling with infertility, and my aim is to help you get pregnant naturally. Today, I'm welcoming Erin Oberlander to the podcast, and we're digging into how to reduce stress with holistic lifestyle hacks. Erin Oberlander is a doctor of musical arts, a certified holistic aromatherapist, herbalist, sound practitioner, and modern homesteader. She's been working with essential oils on a regular basis for the past 14 years as the owner of her company, Prairie Soap. Thanks so much for listening. I'm so thankful that you're here. Make sure you hit subscribe. And if you know someone else who is on the fertility journey, please share this podcast with them. Hey, Erin, excited to have you on the podcast.
I am so excited to be here. Thank you so much, Sarah.
Awesome. Yeah. If you could share your journey of how you came to do this work, you've got quite an interesting number of things that you can bring to the table as far as helping women and couples heal.
Yeah. So, I think a lot of us come into this work, whether we're on the functional side or we're on the holistic side, even if we're in the energy side of things, from our own healing journey. And that is my story. I have struggled with serious health issues for most of my adult life, starting in my mid-20s. And I quickly learned that I was not going to get the answers that I needed from the places that you typically go to look for answers. And so that sent me on a long journey of coming to understand, getting back in touch with nature through a wide variety of different modalities, everything from herbalism to aromatherapy, flower essences, and now sound healing. All of those things have helped me to piece myself back together over the last 20 years. And I really feel that they help to enhance anything that anybody might be working on in their journey with wellness.
Nice. Yeah. So let's talk about, well, first of all, let's talk about your top tips for, like holistic, healthy lifestyle hacks, like something that, places where we can start.
Yeah. So I think this is such a good question because it's overwhelming. We live in that information age, and you can go on a Google search and end down a rabbit trail into something that is very overwhelming. And then you end up never actually changing anything about your health or your wellness or your lifestyle, right? Yeah. So what I think is so important is to be able to get back in touch with the cycles of nature. So many of the things that we see disruptions in right now are circadian rhythms, our, ovulatory cycles, just our basic health is a cycle. It's a circle. There are certain things that recur over and over and over again, but yet we're expecting ourselves to show up as the same person every single day. And when I started to notice and I started to observe that nature was not like that nature had seasons for high activity and nature had seasons for low activity, I started to think to myself, okay, that's interesting because I feel like we've gotten really disconnected from that in the modern world, right? Like we've got indoor heating and plumbing, we've got fluorescent lighting, we've got all kinds of things that create this artificial environment for us that make us more comfortable. And then we've got technology on top of that. That is a distraction and disruption, also a help at the same time. So how do we figure out how to get back in touch with nature? Because some of the things that we're dealing with our health and with our wellness have to do from being disrupted from those natural cycles. And I started to explore what that looks like. And I started to learn from Ayurvedic medicine, and I started to learn from Chinese medicine, and I started to learn from aromatherapy, different ways that I could start to learn from nature again, and to learn that there's seasons to slow down and there's seasons to speed up, and that my value as a human didn't change in those seasons that I was slowing down versus the seasons when I was really productive. So the first thing that I would say as a hack is start to think about and be observant of the seasons, the season that we're in. So right now we're in the beginning of spring at the recording of this podcast. What does spring have to teach us? It has to teach us about new life, new growth, planting seeds, fresh starts. So how can we create those things in our lifestyle? So that's kind of like a big picture concept that I feel is so critical for people to get back in touch with, because it's what humans have been evolved to live like for thousands and thousands of years, and we've only recently lost touch with. And when we can start to get in touch with that concept again, I feel that there's many things that will come to us to begin to restore our relationship, not just with nature, but with our body.
Yeah, I agree with the nature piece. And it's sort of we're in this like go screens and pressure to keep going and even, and everything gets disrupted. We see so many people coming to us with issues around sleep, interrupted sleep and insomnia and, waking up between 2 and 4. And so issues, with the circadian rhythms. And we have like the sponsor of my podcast is Blue Blocks. So blue light glasses. Yeah. So
awesome.
putting those on at sunset to help with the melatonin production, which is key for male and female fertility. So here we are in the spring recording this. Where would you, I've got a spring fertility diet challenge coming out on April the 19th. But so with that all, spring recipes. So what would you do as far as like spring being new start? Obviously it kind of goes with fertility too, with planting a seed and.
Oh my gosh, doesn't it? Yeah. So what I noticed, and actually I was just out in my yard on my homestead, so many of the very first plants that show themselves in spring are those that help our body to detoxify. Now I'm saying this from a very traditional standpoint, a very traditional herbalist standpoint. So we've got dandelion greens, we've got burdock, we've got green onions, those onions that aren't bulbs, but they're just the onion tops almost. Those are some of the first things that emerge in the spring. And it's so interesting that nature seems to be giving us in every season what our body is primed to do. So when you look at Ayurveda, when you look at traditional Chinese medicine, when you look at indigenous cultures, literally almost every single one teaches that this season of the year that we're in right now is when our organs of detoxification, especially the liver and the gallbladder, are primed to do a little bit of a deeper detox. So one of the things that I do with my clients is we do a little bit more intermittent fasting, or even sometimes longer fasts at this time of the year, if that's something that they need. Now, somebody who's going into fertility treatment may or may not be looking at doing that. But just from a meta standpoint, this is the time of the year when our body is most primed and most ready to release any accumulated toxin from having less activity over the winter season.
And then for summer, what about that one? Let's go through the 4 seasons.
Yeah, let's go through the 4 seasons. So in summer, what our primary issue in summer is that we're getting overheated. So fire element is very, very dominant. And so what we want to do is really start with the greens that we had in spring and really begin to enhance that. So we want to be eating a lot more raw foods during the summer, a lot of green foods during the summer. Mango lassis are a favorite of mine during the summer. That's really soothing to the gut. So sometimes when we're overheated, our gut tends to get kind of angry at us. And so we're thinking of things that are soothing, things that are cooling, things that are calming. I love herbal teas, not iced, but a little cool. So in Ayurveda, we teach you don't actually want to ever have iced beverages. And so we want cool beverages. We're not going to be doing a lot of, things that we would eat in the winter. You're probably not going to crave a pumpkin soup in the middle of summer. You might love to go out to your garden and gather some fresh greens and some fresh herbs and make yourself a glorious salad. And that is what your body is ready to do then.
And so can you just give us the ingredients for that mango lassi again?
Yeah. Mango lassi, super easy. So you're just going to get a fresh mango, and then you want to get some really high quality yogurt. If it's anything that actually has live cultures in it, actually live cultures that you might get at the health food store, even make it for yourself, is going to be great. And then you're just going to cut up the mango, and a little bit of that is going to go in a blender. So I'd say probably a cup of mango in a blender with a cup to a cup and a half of yogurt, a little bit of water, and then a very small amount of sweetener if you need it. So maybe some raw honey would be great, and blend that all up and enjoy. If you want it a little cooler, you can throw some ice cubes in there too.
Nice. Yeah, that's good. And if you're staying away from dairy, which we recommend for most of our clients to do the elimination diet, and then typically a lot of them are finding at least, taking out dairy and gluten for 60 to 90 days, you can do a nice coconut yogurt. So there's there.
Yes. And it's amazing that there's getting to be a lot more really delicious options in the dairy-free category.
And then for fall or autumn, what are we looking at there?
Yeah. So the purpose of fall is to harvest. And if you look around, it's one of our highest productivity times at the beginning of fall that quickly drops off into a more of a beginning the season of rest. So at the beginning of fall, we're going to be looking at what's out in our gardens. We've got pumpkins, we've got squash, we've got root vegetables. These types of things going into soups and stews are going to really get us going for the fall. The other thing that happens in the fall is that we start to get more cold. And so adding some spice to our dishes is really great to be able to do during that time of year.
Nice. I always find I get so geared up for September. It's almost like the new January with new projects, all this sort of stuff that I can really burn myself out. And then by December, I'm like, oh my goodness. And then it just keeps going. But where I try to take a little bit of time out in the summer, as much as possible. And then September just seems everyone's like, ooh, time to wake up.
Yeah. It is like a mini season of fresh starts, I think, because we have the back to school season very often that we're thinking of during that time of year. And it's interesting that in Ayurveda, we actually have late summer, early fall as its own season. And then late fall is a separate season from that. Yeah. So that's why I say at the beginning of fall, we're still in that really high level of activity. We are harvesting the fruits of our labors. So that might be, I'm launching that project that I've been working on. But what we start to learn by observation, and observation being such a key thing to getting back in touch with nature, is that the weather gets cold really fast after you're done harvesting. You want to be ready for a long winter. And so you want to store up your food, do your home canning, freezing, whatever you're going to do for yourself. And then we have a brief time where we ingather that. And then we have that deep rest that we go into, mid to late fall and then all through the winter.
Yeah. So let's go into winter. What does that look like?
Yeah. So winter has a lot in common with late fall. So we're still going to be doing a lot of soups and stews, probably the heaviest food of the year. If you're a red meat eater, you could do a chili, or you could do a vegan chili at this time of year would be great. We want to make sure that we're keeping the lymph moving during winter, because with the cold temperatures and then you tend to have less activity during winter, right, for most of us. That means that sometimes the lymph can get congested. So making sure that we're having a little bit of spice in our food, making sure that we're attending to gut health can really help. And this is not going to be the time of year when you're going to ask your body to want to digest a bunch of raw food, because the way that the traditional systems look at this is that the digestive fire really needs to be fed in a different way during the winter season than it does during the summer. So we really want to just focus on deep nourishment, bone broths, things like that can be really great for winter. Usually cooked food and less raw things.
Yeah, it's interesting with the raw food that came up to Canada, and then I've seen a lot of the restaurants just go under because even though I like some of the raw food, but eating that, I would eat it in the summer or late spring. Eating it in the fall or winter, I'm like, I'm too cold. I don't want like a cold food. I want like a little soup or a stew or something warming.
Yes, absolutely. And keeping those root vegetables in there also just helps to keep the body warm and nourished. You're giving yourself a little bit more of a starchy element there that just helps to keep the metabolism going.
Yeah, especially for Chinese medicine, about keeping the womb warm. So.
Oh yeah,
warming foods, which is key, and they say they even keep socks on your feet too to keep yourself warm.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that's the nature. Any other hacks you can say for getting into the healthy lifestyle?
Oh man, I mean,
probably like 100 million, but
100 million.
Like your top tips. You're like, okay, yeah.
So I really started into aromatherapy. That's where I started first down my holistic journey. And I'm still learning every day. And this is like 20 years into it, but learning to use a moderate and safe amount of essential oils to help to moderate stress, as well as to help enhance sleep, are two things that are really important. And then along with that, I would add adaptogenic herbs. Adaptogenic herbs are a class of herbs that help our bodies to adapt to stress and changing conditions. It's things like ashwagandha, eleuthero, and ginseng and things like that. That has been one of the most impactful aspects of my healing path. And coming back to a sense of wholeness in my body has been using the adaptogens to help with an out of control stress response as a type A person that does not know how to slow down.
That's right. Yes, I keep an adrenal complex. I take that daily, and the essential oils too. I love essential oils, and I've done many podcasts on them. But as far as your like the one I like for sleep is lavender or vetiver, and then also just for stress is which one do I like? I actually have one by it's Vibrant Blue Oils. I just interviewed her, and she has a parasympathetic one, which is really cool. And you just put it on the mastoid bone, sort of in the vagus nerve there, and it helps to get into that parasympathetic state. But what are your go-to blends, and what do you like?
Oh my gosh, that sounds amazing. I want to hear more about that blend. So everybody thinks of lavender for calming, and that is going to be useful for the majority of people. However, I do notice that there's like 20% of people that really dislike lavender.
Yeah, they do.
So,
it's strange that they do, but apparently 20%. Yeah.
Yeah. So what I like to use as a substitute for that, especially when a person needs to calm down, and if they're struggling with insomnia, especially, is bergamot.
Okay, yeah.
And I would actually say bergamot's like a multi-use essential oil, because I also like to use it when I'm feeling anxious or even when I'm feeling low. It really is a mood booster without making you feel amped up, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
Another essential oil that I feel is very similar to that, but allows, and they actually have studies that show that it changes your brainwaves into more of a meditative state, is frankincense.
Yeah.
So I will often use frankincense during the workday when I'm needing creative output or just a high flow state. But I want to make sure that I'm not approaching my work from a sense of hurry, a sense of fear, a sense of stress. I will diffuse a little bit of frankincense, or I'll even use it as an anointing oil. Now, for anxiety and stress, my very favorite combination, and the one that I feel, especially for people that are trying to conceive, is invaluable, is the combination of ylang ylang and vetiver. With vetiver, you have a root. It's literally a root. It smells like dirt in a good way. If you can think of dirt smelling good, it is going to help to ground the energy into the body. So when we're hurried, when we're rushed, when we're stressed, our energy tends to float outside of our body, like above us. And a lot of times when you hear people talk about their stress experiences, that they're feeling out of body, they're feeling disembodied, they're not feeling within themselves or connected to themselves. So vetiver just helps to draw that energy down into the body. And then the flip side of stress is that very often we're having a difficult time, not just being present in the moment, but having joy in the presence of the moment. And so the ylang ylang is known as a euphoric. And there's been studies done on ylang ylang with anxiety with really amazing results. So the combination that I like to use with that is to put a drop of each in a little carrier oil and then put it right over my heart. And especially when I'm feeling super anxious or even like my heart's racing or whatever, that is an amazing, amazing little trick for you to use.
Yeah, one of my favorite, I don't know how to find it, maybe I don't pronounce it right, but I call it ylang ylang. Is it along or?
Yeah, be either one. It means flower. Yeah. I mean, people say it a lot of different ways. Yeah, it's a beautiful tropical flower, and it's one of the floral oils that is also going to be on the affordable side, which is really a nice thing about it too.
Yeah, it's one of my favorite ones. I like it just in general. It just seems to me signify relaxation. And the frankincense one is neat too for that unhurried flow where you're just there. You're not thinking about anything else, because it's also good for students, I guess, for clarity and being focused.
Yes. Some people reach for rosemary and peppermint for that same thing. Yeah. You know, rosemary helps with mental focus, but I feel that there's a difference between being focused and being focused in a mindful way. And so that would be the difference to me between rosemary and frankincense.
Got it. Okay. So sound healing, I've experienced a number of sound healing experiences over time. And yeah, I love it. How did you get into it, and what are the benefits that you see?
So it's kind of crazy. My husband and I went to Palm Springs for vacation a few years ago. And my background way back in the day is I have a doctorate in opera. So I've been a musician my whole life. Yeah. Yeah, but then I got into healing because of just needing to attend to my own health. And then that turned into a whole practice helping others, because when you have that many tools in your toolbox, honestly, it's selfish not to share it. But I was like, okay, well, I still don't know how this music piece fits in for me, right? So we went to Palm Springs and we went out to this place called the Integratron, which is an acoustically perfect building in the middle of nowhere in the desert. And it's kind of got a strange story to it involving UFOs and things like that. But now there's 3 caretakers that are sisters that have it, and they invite people to come and have sound baths there. And I had seen this on an Anthony Bourdain No Reservations episode a long time ago. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I want to do for my 40th birthday. We have to go do this. So my husband worked it out and we did. And so we go into the Integratron, and it's all wood construction. It's like a dome, all made of wood. And there's these huge crystal bowls in there. And you lie down on these mats, and for a whole hour, this immense amount of sound just penetrates into your soul and your cells and your DNA. And it's like being on some kind of a shamanic journey or a trip. Honestly, I don't even know how to describe what happened to us there, other than that I had the most clarity of thought that I've ever had in my entire life. And we both walked away from there having huge breakthroughs in our self-talk in what we thought was possible in our lives, in the direction that we want to go, in where we were headed spiritually, and even with our businesses. And since then, there's been so many new things that have opened up for us. So as soon as I had that experience, I was like, well, this is like this is second nature to me to be able to do this. So I started to take some training from a company called Sound Rate Instruments. And I was just amazed that in human history, sound has been a part of our community practices, our celebrations, our spiritual practices since the beginning of time. And different sounds produce different sorts of results in the body. And now it's being studied by places like Heart Math Institute and, in medicine to kill tumors, even just crazy things are being done with sonic frequency. So I was like, okay, I'm going to do this. And so now I'm doing sound baths online and also in person. I just did one for a women's group last night. And it's so fun for people to experience this very, very deep and nourishing state of relaxation that honestly, I've been practicing yoga and doing mindfulness and meditation forever. But sound healing for me is like a short circuit to get to that deepest place and to keep me there for long enough that when I come back from it, I feel that my body has really been restored in a completely different way than anything else works in that way for me. And this is what I'm hearing from my clients as well.
What are you finding so I've done it in person. I've listened to some online. What are you finding the difference with being in person and then online? Is there a difference? Does it matter?
You're still going to see a vast majority of the benefits by taking it online. So my teacher, Zakiah Blackburn, I think what he said is he feels like 80 to 90% of the benefits can be experienced in an online session as compared to an in-person. So that's almost everything. Some of the differences are going to be, if I'm playing my gong for you and you're lying on the floor in front of the gong, you're going to experience the vibration of the gong, not just in your ear, but also into your body through the conductivity of the floor. So you're getting a little bit more of a visceral experience. But when it comes to just achieving that state of relaxation that is so challenging for so many of us to allow ourselves, first of all, but then to actually be able to get there is another thing. I think that can be achieved through the online platform very well.
Nice. Yeah. I went just last week, actually, to a meditation retreat, meditation yoga and spa, kind of the whole thing. And they did a drum circle, but then it actually was more of a shamanic thing. And so I've done the shamanic with the drums where she just lightly tapped her drum and we went, down, down, down to the center of your heart and things like that, which is really good. Now this one, she did the tap, tap, tap. And then all of a sudden as I was lying there, she beat the crap out of this drum. It scared me, but it was it took me to this different plane. It was completely insane. I was flying like an eagle. It was so wild to have and she would go soft and then pow, 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 pow. So just, that experience, I came out of there. I'm like, oh my God, it was, transformative actually. So I've done the sound baths with in yoga studios a few times. Some of them were almost painfully loud. I was like, oh my God, I feel like I've lost my hearing. Is that maybe that's too loud. Maybe I was too close to it. I don't really know.
Yeah. I mean, sometimes it is just too loud. But another thing that is interesting about the body is that the body in certain tissues in your cells and in your DNA can actually hold memory. One thing that I experienced with my first sound bath is that I actually had an anxiety attack during the first part of it because the sound was so overwhelming that I felt like I couldn't breathe.
Yeah.
What I know now is that oftentimes some of those stored traumas, stored negative memories, even generational memories that are stored in our DNA, in our cell, in our fascia, can actually be released through the power of frequency. That's the theory, and that's my experience. I don't know that there's any scientific support to that piece yet, but there is scientific support to so many other aspects of sound healing that it doesn't really take that much for me to take one step further and say, yes, I think it does
exactly. That. Just do it. I know. I think looking back, maybe that's more, I was very uncomfortable. I was like, I was like, okay, let me out of here, but I stayed with it. And so then, maybe that's kind of what it was. That's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then, any other thoughts with sound healing you want to share?
I think that a lot of people hear about this stuff and they think that it has to be really woo woo and that they'd have to be into, shamanism and real hippy dippy in order to benefit from it, or they might be intimidated by it, or they might not think that it's going to benefit them. And what I would say is that I approach my sound baths honestly from pretty much a scientific standpoint more than anything. The heartbeat of your heart entrains to the beat of the drum. And this creates for your heart brain something called coherence. Right. Coherence is a state of perfect harmony within yourself that allows you to show up as your best self. It calms your entire body down. It helps you to go into the parasympathetic, and it helps to bring out the best emotional state for you. This is not somebody's made up thing. This is something that's actually being studied by places like the Heart Math Institute. So I would encourage somebody, if they haven't tried something like this, give it a chance, because the brain scans are there to show that when you play the Tibetan bowls or the gongs, that it totally turns off the monkey mind in our brain that we can just never get to shut up with our running to-do list and all of the things that we think we need to do in our negative self-talk. The gong or the Tibetan bowl just takes that completely away and allows you just to be at rest and at peace within yourself. And isn't that something that really is a primal need that all of us have and that all of us are craving? And yet, how often are we actually getting there, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the Heart Math has got tons of 20 years or more of scientific studies. So anyone wants to kind of nerd out on that, there's lots of information. The quick coherence technique, I think is 18, what is it, minute and a half. You can do that. Plus they have all kinds of other ones. They had one actually you could listen to during the pandemic if you're feeling anxious or any kind of uncomfortable emotions there. So they had a number of free resources. It's really good. I had someone stepped on it here, but I had the Bluetooth one where it was, it could connect into my phone and I could see my heart rate while I was doing the meditation. Oh, I could see when I was off planning a whole party, when I was, should have been meditating, you can see, and then you can see when I was into the breathing, I would do the belly breathing, you could see that I was more focused. So it's interesting. Sometimes we can meditate, but we're not even there. We're somewhere else. And, that really would be oh, there's the data at the end. Not but more okay, that's interesting.
Yeah. So what my teacher taught me about reaching that coherent state is that, so being in a mindful meditative state is like step one. It's like the base of the pyramid. It's your foundation. But then when you add the sound on top of that, it makes getting into that meditative state so much easier. And then when you add a guided element to that, for instance, there's someone there playing the music for you, encouraging you to let your energy go down into the earth and be nourished, or whatever they're talking you through, the benefits become exponential. It's not just additive, it's exponential. And it's almost an instant traveling into that coherent state and an ease in which to get there, which I think is man, I'm ready for some things in my life to be easier. So I'm good with that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. No, I have a spiritual teacher and she has a program I'm in, and she guides me through these things where I'm off doing past lives and my reading screens and all this stuff. It's so fascinating. I can just hang out there all day long. I love all of it. But to me, I think it is coming a little more, out of the hippy dippy thing, coming a little more mainstream. And I think if you hear some of these things, I'm just open-mindedly just go and explore it. And you're oh my goodness, what is all this? And why have I not found this my whole life? And, and it's been presented here. So it's kind of going into, to dig into it if it feels right for you. The lunar infusion. So I saw that on your website, which looked really cool. And I've heard about this with doing the same thing with crystals and then with tea. I don't know if I've heard of that one, but yeah. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So a lunar infusion is simply making an herbal tea, not with sun like you would with sun tea, but with the moon, with the moonlight. And it's so easy to do. And it's so fun because I feel like it's an application of energy that people can feel. So you can actually make an experiment for yourself. You could make a brewed tisane, a brewed herbal tea inside, not in the moonlight, then use the same tea, put it in a mason jar or something with water, and then let it steep outside in the moonlight. And you want to do this the narrow window of 2 to 3 days before and after the full moon, or on the full moon is when you want to do this, just because there's enough light there that it'll actually do something. And then drink that brew first thing in the morning. and see if you can notice a difference in how it feels, the regular one versus the one that you did with the lunar infusion.
And so what do you notice?
What I notice is that there is this cool, calming energy that comes from the lunar infusion. It is, oh man, it's like hard to explain. It's like silvery. I would say it's a very feminine sort of energy, in that it's very nurturing. It's very amenable. It really is different than just brewing a cup of tea. It does shift your emotions and your energy body to a different place.
And do you have a type of tea that you would brew?
So there's a tea blend for Mountain Rose herbs that I've been drinking for years called Dawn Chorus Blend. I'm assuming they still have it. They did the last time that I ordered it. It has lots of beautiful things like nettles and rose petals, and it's visually pleasing as well as just really good. Now, I don't drink caffeine. I'm assuming that there's some of your clients that are wanting to reduce their caffeine intake.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So this is a beautiful herbal tea that is, I wouldn't say it's like an exact corollary substitute for a coffee, but it is something that is going to be fortifying for you, for your morning and for your day. That's going to actually strengthen you and is going to give you a different kind of energy instead of that false racing, energy that you're getting from the caffeine. This is going to be a slow release of nourishment and strengthening through the tea.
More of the feminine energy side of things instead of the yang.
Yep.
Huh.
Yep, exactly.
And so I noticed that you're into homesteading. This is really weird, but I didn't homesteading, like I think I'd heard of it but it wasn't really until I read the book by Kristen Hanna. And she had but she's got some really, I don't know, I love all her books. I just read one recently from her. Oh, Four Winds. In this one, they went up to Alaska and they had to homestead because they were prepared for 8 months of winter. And so talking all about that. And, that's kind of where it kind of came onto my radar. And I don't know why it took me so long to see it, but, let's talk about what it is and really how has it taught you to slow down?
Yeah. Well, so homesteading is basically eking a living off of the land that you live on, to just put it to the simplest definition. It is actually how I grew up. I grew up on a farm here in North Dakota. We had a huge garden. We did canning and preserving. My dad grew, grains. We had cattle. We hunted. All of those are aspects of how do we provide for our basic daily needs, which is, again, coming back to that conversation of how disconnected have we gotten from nature that we don't have the slightest clue where our food comes from, nor do we care. So when you can start to restore that relationship, you really start to realize that nature really is supplying literally everything that you need in every moment. So it's a way to begin to get back to some of that and to be more in touch with where that nourishment is coming from, whether it's herbs or meat or vegetables or whatever it may be for you, fibers. So what homesteading has looked like for us is that we have a little bit of land and we're doing permaculture. Are you familiar with permaculture, Sarah?
Yeah, I've heard of it. Yeah.
Okay. So it means permanent agriculture, and it means that you are trying to create a closed system within your production. And it uses the principles of earth care, people care, and fair share. So what you want to do is actually over time create a system where the system feeds itself and will need less maintenance. So instead of tilling, you're not going to till. Instead of throwing your garbage out, you're going to compost, and you might have chickens to help with some of that. And you just really are wanting to give back to the land as much as the land is giving back to you, if that makes sense. And so on our land, we have chickens and geese and peacocks, and we grow a lot of the stuff that I distill and sell in my apothecary is made from different herbs and plants that we grow. And it's always developing. Eventually, we'd love to be totally off grid, but that's quite a process to go through.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah. But for us, it's just been how many of our own needs can we supply? And then when we have left over, how can we use that to benefit those around us or to create an additional income stream for ourselves as well?
Has it always been called homesteading, or is it just now becoming trendy with the homesteading piece?
So I think it's become trendy because people are doing this in urban environments,
right?
Urban homesteading. And they're realizing, oh my gosh, that unused boulevard space in front of my house or my apartment, I could actually plant into something and have something to show for it. Plus I don't have to mow all the time and use a bunch of chemicals and stuff. So it's a way to reduce toxic load. It's a way to produce beautiful organic food that's healthy for you. And it's a way to get back in touch with nature and really, really start to heal the land that you live on.
Yeah, the monocrops and all the rest of the stuff that we're eating. Yeah, and so how has it taught you then to slow down?
Oh my gosh. You cannot rush nature. You just can't. And you can't do something in a season that it's not intended for, right? I can't go out and plant my seeds in the dead of winter. That is insanity. So it teaches you immediately that there is a season for everything, just like Ecclesiastes says. It also teaches you to be a very good observer of your environment and what's going on, whether it's to observe, okay, this plant likes to grow here, but not there. This is a microclimate that will support a tree that doesn't usually live in my zone. So like, for example, in North Dakota, where we live, we're zone 4, yet we're able to grow peach trees that are zone 5 and zone 6 because we've figured out where our microclimates will actually support it on our property. You just learn that you need to partner with nature rather than trying to fight against it. And when you figure out how to partner with it, it is just a brain explosion after brain explosion of seeing what you've been missing and what you can leverage and what you can use and how you can not just use, but also give back to the property and the animals and the plants that are nourishing you.
Yeah, my husband's more the gardener here. He does seeds, although he hasn't done them this year, but usually he'll do some plantings and enjoys all of that. What we get an organic box that's delivered to us, and then we get our organic meat and all that stuff. So I've kind of been able to source that. What would someone do if they wanted to like dip their toe into this, but they're in an urban area? What would you suggest?
Yeah, so people would be surprised how much food that they can grow even in buckets on their in a windowsill or on their deck in an apartment. It's surprising. You plant a couple of tomato plants. Around that, you tuck in your lettuce and your greens and things, and you actually have a nice little salad for yourself all through the growing season every single day. But beyond that, the book that really helped me to understand that you can size this concept for no matter how much space you have is a book called Gaia's Garden by Toby Hemingway. And he, as far as like homesteading and permaculture stuff goes, is the most accessible, in my opinion, to people that are just starting out and teaches the basic principles and things to look for and try. And then he teaches you how to lay out your property. And this is a place where you might want to plant this, or this would be a good place for a chicken coop. And this is why, and so forth. And so I would actually start by reading a few books like that. But if you're not able to do that for whatever reason, doing what you're doing, Sarah, really starting to be honest about where your food's coming from. Are you sourcing from a local source when possible? Are you going organic with possible? Are you going to your farmer's market? Are you getting to know the people that grow your food? Ask them questions about how they do that. Ask them questions about why they're passionate about it. Let it be that what it used to be, which is the whole community grows the food together to keep each other alive. We can get back to some of that, and it helps to restore not just our connection with nature then, but also the sense of disconnection that we're all experiencing from each other, not just because of everything that's happened this last year, but because of so many other things beyond that.
Yeah. And that was that Guy's, Guys garden?
Gaia, Gaia ''S and then garden.
Okay. Yeah. Gaia's Garden. And that's by Toby Hemingway. And what about those, there's a whole bunch of those hydroponic little towers and stuff like that. I haven't got into that, but what's your take on that?
Garden towers. Yeah. We have tried it and we have not had that great of luck with it. I know people that have much better luck with it. I think for us, we live in such a windy spot that anything that we have outside that's not sheltered just gets beat up. But I have friends that live in urban environments that are short on space that have a sheltered place to put something like that, and it grows beautifully for them. One thing I will say is whatever dirt that they're currently recommending that you get to put in there, do it, because it makes a big difference. Don't just go out and dig a hole in your yard. Start with what they're suggesting and then let it grow from there.
Yeah, I know in my organic box, I'll get some living lettuce. And that lettuce, I have to say, is the best lettuce I've ever had.
Right?
This is a salad. What's that other crap in a box?
Well, and that brings up another subject that I haven't really touched on, but that is how your quality of life improves when you start to get back in touch with nature. Everything tastes better and everything becomes an experience unto itself. And a chance to, make a beautiful meal with your partner. When you're dealing with infertility, one of those things that happens is there's just a lot of stress and strain. Mm-hmm. Doing some of these things together, like growing a garden tower or getting some chickens or constructing a gorgeous meal out of things that you went down into the farmer's market and bought. Like this is how my husband and I connect. And it's one of the things that keeps our relationship nourishing.
Yeah, it's very healing with the foods. And my kids are always like, "Oh, well, you and your organic." I'm like, you go back now and try to have the conventional stuff, and you'll realize that you're spoiled rotten with this. Like these foods are so amazing. And when you have a piece of chicken that's not, it's like a piece of rubber, or you have vegetables that aren't, it's like, oh, wait a minute, what is that? Yeah. So it is kind of and it's like you have to gradually change over, at least, making sure you don't have the dirty dozen. And so you did recommend a book there. Is there anything else that you're obsessed with, be it a book, a website, an app, a documentary, anything that's on your radar you'd like to share?
Oh my gosh. So much. I'm still going down the rabbit trail of sound healing right now, and just all of the benefits that it offers. And honestly, just getting into the practice of that and the experience of that with people is something that's really feeding my soul right now. And especially now that things here at least are starting to open up a little bit more, it just seems like people are so hungry for that, and they're just so much more open than they tend to be. So that's kind of what I'm really riffing on a lot right now, is just the sound healing. But I think getting back to spring, exploring the messages of spring, how can I make a fresh start? Even if things have fallen apart this last year, if things have been really challenging, how can I, for myself, make a fresh start, draw a line in the sand, do something new, maybe do your challenge or something like that. That is what I would encourage people to really think about, how they can make a fresh start, how they can start to get back in touch with nature. I have some resources for that. If that's helpful for people, they can go to my website, Arcadia Holistic School. I've got classes and different free resources for people, sound baths and things like that are available too.
And is there a success story, anything you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I have quite a few, but my favorite one recently has been one of my VIP coaching clients. So I coach people to create a holistic lifestyle from scratch in 12 weeks. So basically, I take everything that I've learned in the last 20 years and I serve it to you on a silver platter. There's aromatherapy, there's herbalism, there's seasonal living. We even touch on permaculture. We get into traditional Chinese medicine, Ayurveda. And as part of that process, they get to do an Ayurvedic profile. And when they do that profile, they find out what's called their dosha, which is kind of your constitution type. What elements does your body have a lot of? And when we know that, we can figure out how and when things start to feel out of balance. So I have a client and we did her Ayurvedic profile, and she's a real spitfire. She's a straight shooter. She's a martial artist. She's just awesome. And she's like, I really have no idea what I am. And so we went through her profile and we found out that she's a Pitta. And that means that she has a lot of fire element and a lot of water element. And fire and water together is volcanic. So that means that somebody who's a Pitta tends to have problems with their temper. They tend to have hot conditions, like their skin gets red and itchy, for example, just a really simple thing. They also tend to have really great metabolism and do really great with tough workouts and things like that. So we were talking about all through the process of her makeover, how can we incorporate your understanding of your dosha into this process? And it took about 3 weeks for her to start to have things click. And it was all about teaching her to observe for herself what was happening in her body and what was happening around her. And we talked one week and she's like, oh my gosh, Erin, I saw my Pitta everywhere this week. I saw it in how I was relating to my clients. I saw it in how I was annoyed with my roommate. I saw it in this or that. And she's like, you know what? I was going to eat some really hot, spicy food and I decided not to. And when I decided to eat cool foods and have some peppermint tea, all of a sudden I noticed that I wasn't so, hot around the collar. And so then by the end of her makeover, she didn't just have a rudimentary understanding of this anymore. She understands it on a very deep level, and it's empowered her to move forward in her life from this point forward with whatever she's going to do, to know when things are going to go out of balance for her and what things may cause imbalances for her, and then how to counteract that so that she can maintain a better sense of harmony within herself and within her lifestyle.
I love that. That's cool.
Yeah.
And so you have a free download for the listeners. So it's a free 15-minute discovery call for the VIP one-to-one holistic lifestyle coaching or any other service. And I'll have the link in the show notes, but it's bit.ly/discover with Erin. Is there anything you wanted to share what they get there?
Yeah. So this is for anybody that's just like, oh my gosh, I really have always wanted to explore holistic stuff, but I'm intimidated, or I don't know where to start, or I'm afraid to do something wrong. These are the people that I want to be talking to on these discovery calls. And just because we chat doesn't mean that VIP holistic coaching is going to be for you. We might find out that, oh, actually what you need is a class about essential oil 101 and where to start with that. And so we get you funneled into what is going to serve you best for this season of your life. And it's quick and easy and zero pressure.
Amazing. So any final thoughts on switching to or leaning into a holistic lifestyle?
Give it time. Nature does not ever hurry, ever, even in the highest productivity times. So see this as a process that's going to unfold for you over the course of many years. And within that, there's much mindfulness, there's much nourishment, there's much spiritual growth, personal growth that can happen. So this isn't a project where you can just like check it off your list and be like, I know everything now, I'm good. This is an art form of creating the lifestyle of your dreams. And whether you're going to go at a faster pace or slower pace, learn to be present and enjoy that process and really savor it. Love it. Thanks so much for coming on. It was a great conversation. Thanks, Erin. Thank you so much. I regularly speak with 5 to 10 couples per week who are struggling to have their baby. And although we want to help everyone, we only have 4 spots available per month to work with us. I would like to invite you and your partner to a Supercharge Your Fertility Discovery Call. And this call is for you if you meet at least one of these criteria. You've been trying to get pregnant for at least 2 years. You've been through at least one failed IUI or IVF. This calls for action takers. If you're not ready and you wait, the risk is you'll need to wait 2 to 3 months for a spot to open up. If you're seriously considering working with us, go to FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. That's FabFertile, F-A-B Fertile, and click on Book a Free Call. Then you'll be all booked in and ready to spend 30 minutes to give you the action plan to getting pregnant naturally. Hey, guess what? Blue Blocks is having their end of year financial sale. You can save 20% off on orders up to $159 US, 25% off on orders over $160 US, and 30% off on orders over $315 US. Definitely check out their awesome selection of blue and green light blocking glasses for day use and for evening use as well. The Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, including show notes and links, provides information with respect to healthy living, nutrition, lab testing, and is intended for informational purposes only. The information provided is not a substitute for medical advice, diagnosis, or treatment, nor is it to be construed as such. We cannot guarantee that the information provided on the Get Pregnant Naturally podcast reflects the most up-to-date medical research. Information is provided without representation or warranties of any kind. Please consult a qualified physician for medical advice and always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare provider with any questions you may have regarding your health and nutrition program.